I'm Jabari Jones, actually a native of Louisiana, Natchitoches, Louisiana, by that way. If any of you heard of Cane River area, that is where I'm from. I have worked in libraries for the past 24 years, working actually in the Fort Worth Library in the Genealogy, History, and Archives department. After leaving there, I ended up going to the Dallas Public Library System, working at the Skyline Branch Library, which is a community library, and as the manager of that library. And also I'm on the National Juneteenth Board, which is going to be where the museum, National Juneteenth Museum, will be located in Fort Worth. And we've been working pretty hard and diligently on getting this museum off the ground. We are scheduled open in the fall of 2025. We have recently broke ground. So whenever you all get to traveling again, please stop in Fort Worth and check out the Juneteenth Museum. So I'm going to get ready and we're going to start this program.
Great.
Okay, and let's see how to work this system. Okay. So let's just first give a background of what Juneteenth is. A lot of people still really actually don't know exactly what Juneteenth is. And Juneteenth is a holiday now, but it actually celebrates the June 19th, 1865, when the last known slaves were actually announced, or actually got the announcement of the ending of slavery, which happened in Galveston, Texas. If you're kind of familiar with Texas, Galveston is a nearby community of Houston, kind of probably about an hour south of Houston. So during that time frame, people in Texas pretty much, especially African Americans, did not realize that slavery had ended, especially in the southern and central area of Texas. Most of the ones in East Texas, which is pretty much, if you're familiar with Texas, Marshall, Jefferson, Texas, Tyler, so forth, basically got the news. And as it traveled further in and traveled down south to Galveston, that's when the information was available for them in the southern area of Texas. And let's continue. So prior to the Civil War, as we know, 1619, when slavery actually started in America, much of the labor and of the South and pretty much of the American states, the U.S., was actually done by enslaved people. So pretty much this was practiced among most people in the actually practiced among the U.S. citizens of the world, basically, as prior to the war. So January 1st, 1863, when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed by Abraham Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln, the freeing of enslaved people in the Confederate States began. Now, just to kind of give a little bit more about Texas, Texas is a very huge state. So it's always been debate back and forth of why was the information received so late in Texas? Well, if you're going back in that time frame, remember most things were doing horse-drawn carriages, horses, and so forth, going into that particular area, especially into Texas. And in that area of Galveston is a pretty swampy and actually kind of mostly watered area. So getting information to that area would probably take a lengthy amount of time, especially during the end of the Civil War. So coming from East Texas and coming from the southern states, coming from Louisiana, traveling further south, then a lot of debate has that, it probably would have took at least a 2-year time frame to get to that area. And then you also have debates with a lot of scholars here, especially in Texas, stating that pretty much it was some of the people did not really care about getting the information because they felt, hey, they'll get it sooner or later. One of my main things I've often talked about with other people that I've discussed this with often is that even when the information was brought to Galveston, you still have to remember most slaves could not read or write. So understanding what was even being put on that particular building at that time is still debatable. How would you even know that you were free? Because once the information was available, people from the other states, from Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, they were also migrating to Texas because they knew that they were free. It was also that time frame of homesteading as well. So just if you're looking at that time frame and seeing that, it's kind of hard to debate the time frame for Juneteenth, but of course it came about, and June 19th is what we're always celebrating, especially in the state of Texas. My actual family, I'm from Louisiana, but my family actually migrated from Texas to Louisiana, which is kind of interesting at that time frame. So Major General Gordon Granger, who was the general that actually made the announcement on June 19th, 1865, of the emancipation of the slaves that were in Texas. And it was the General Order number 3. And as you can see here, this is a snippet of General Order number 3, stating of the proclamation and the executive order given by President Lincoln on the emancipation of the slaves of Texas. And then also, if you look at January 31st, 1865, 2 years, right, Emancipation Proclamation of 13th Amendment was added to the Constitution as well, stating of the ending of slavery in the states. So you had these two major orders going on at that time frame and letting people know of the ending of slavery. And as I stated earlier, if you're familiar with Texas, most of the major slave areas of Texas were pretty much in the southern area. So that was the reason going to Galveston, Houston, in that particular area, because of the fertile area there. Pretty much, as you know, in most southern areas, the cotton and the sugarcane of that time frame, this was that area where he had to actually come into. So the first Juneteenth celebrations pretty much happened. The very first one was 1866, and action happened in Galveston. And it was the celebration of the Emancipation Day, as many people have known it, Liberation Day or Jubilee Day. Most people in the northern Texas area pretty much call it Emancipation Day. Typically people in the southern Texas area known as call it as Jubilee Day. And I've seen it so many different ways. We're often taught that only people in Texas actually celebrate Juneteenth, but as you know, Texas being so big, a lot of slaves did go to other places in other areas and still celebrate Juneteenth. And I remember my little snippet of my parents telling me one time when they were kids that my great grandparents were celebrating this festive holiday that they didn't know anything about, didn't see it on the calendar, didn't know anything about it, but it was the fact that they were celebrating Juneteenth because this was something that their grandparents and so forth were celebrating who came out of slavery. So most people in that time frame, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, which are bordering states, had people that came out of Texas. So it was typically a celebration in those particular states more than anywhere else, especially being descendants of slaves, such as my family are descendants of slaves. So the federal holiday, as it came to be known, June 17, 2021, when President Biden signed the holiday into effect, just to kind of give people a little bit more recognition of that. The young lady, as I always call her when I see her, Miss Opal Lee, who's in this picture here, her and several other people in the Fort Worth area have always been pushing for this. One was a gentleman by the name of E.B. Carey, C.C. Russo. These people were actually pushing for this holiday early on, even back as far as in the early 70s, even late 60s, trying to push for this to be a national holiday, just being because of the time frame that they grew up in. Opal Lee being 94 years old, having relationships with people that had direct contact with slavery. So this was something major to her to push and kept pushing until they finally got it into a law, and well, not law, a actual holiday. So a federal holiday at that. So that is one of the major pushes in Texas still, is trying to celebrate this. If you ever come to Fort Worth, Texas, we have a huge going on with Juneteenth. We have a Juneteenth program. We have this national Juneteenth. We have a wide array of different activities celebrating Juneteenth. So this is why one of the factors of that we are pushing for the Juneteenth Museum, which we finally got, and also has support from the state and the city, so from Texas and the city of Fort Worth, to build this particular museum. And as you see, this is the rendering of the museum and how it will look. As I told you, June 19, 2025 will be the time when we actually break ground, actually open, because we already broke ground. Apologize for that. And then this is a rendering of what we at the Juneteenth Museum have also recently just kind of found out exactly what states have been celebrating Juneteenth and what states are actually recognizing Juneteenth. The last state to actually recognize Juneteenth as even a notion or a holiday was actually Arizona, the state of Arizona. So we're trying to make sure that people celebrate around the country and particularly around the world, because we have so many people that have moved away and went other places and outside of the countries, but to also celebrate the significance of Juneteenth. As you know, we celebrate July 4th, but many slaves and many African-American descendants weren't free at that time when July 4th came about. So we always call it the second reckoning or the second liberation as far as African-Americans being free, and that being Juneteenth. So this is the Juneteenth flag. So if you're coming to this particular area, you'll see a lot of these coming up soon, especially in this particular area here. This particular flag was adopted by the National Association of Juneteenth. And this is designed by Ben Haith, who designed it in 1997, and it was adopted. If you look here, as you see the red, white, and blue, basically showing that descendants of slaves are Americans and were Americans, and also showing the star representing the state of Texas. So the Texas star. So this is the flag that we represent for Juneteenth. Right now we have several of them flying actually outside of the city of Dallas and also in the city of Fort Worth. Okay. So the main reason why we want to make sure people celebrate Juneteenth and why it's important to us is because it shows respect, equality for all people. We want to make sure that everyone knows that we as African Americans and descendants of slaves have, the same rights, the same privileges, and we want just to be treated fairly and equal. So this is the main reason for the celebration of Juneteenth. It was a delayed time frame, but we did become free. And I talk a little fast. That's the part of the Louisiana Southern side of me. So please stop me, and if you have any questions also, because I do want to get into the part of the music that led to freedom. And typically, if you know anything about African-American history, music is a major part of the African-American culture. And if you're looking at this particular map, you'll see the Underground Railroad. And this is showing.
I'm sorry, we have a question about whether Arizona was the last state to have Juneteenth, to recognize Juneteenth.
Well, they were the last state to recognize it as a
MLK Day. I'm sorry, Martin Luther King Day. Apologize.
Yeah, they were true. That is true. Martin Luther King was they were the last state to recognize MLK as well. Okay. So looking at this map, this is the Underground Railroad and how the map played out and how the arrows went for freedom. And basically from the escape to the north, or actually even to the south, to Mexico. This is the way that the map had flowed. Typically, you don't see a lot coming out of Texas because it was basically, as I stated earlier, just East Texas and that Southeast area. So those the people that actually from that particular time frame, a lot went to the border towns of Mexico. And if they did escape on the eastern side between Louisiana and Arkansas, then a lot went to what was called no man's land, which was Oklahoma. So you'll often see descendants of slaves that went to Oklahoma. At that time, it was not a slave state, and it was just more of a no man's land. So to keep the secret of the Underground Railroad, a lot of singing and a lot of lingo, which the special lingo was made from different songs, which were folk songs, basically slave songs, work songs, and they were used to direct themselves to freedom. So this is some of the words and some of the lingo that was pretty often used to depict and how to use toward getting as key codes to get out, as they say, to get out of the South, going to the North or going toward Mexico. And as you see, some of the things like Promised Land being Canada, River Jordan, the Ohio River, because it was a navigating river to get up north. Also the conductor, the person conducting the slaves, which was, if you often saw, and if you actually saw the movie Harriet, about Harriet Tubman, as she was a conductor. The station, which was a safe house, And most stations at the time were mostly churches or homes of people that were abolitionists that can help navigate the slaves out. Station master and so forth. And as you see the fall as the drinking gourd. And many of you may have heard the song Follow the Drinking Gourd, basically looking at talking about the North Star. If you look at the North Star, follow that drinking gourd, it'll take you there. And as a lot of us have probably who have known African-American history and know the African-American spirituals, know the different terminologies such as heaven and what it meant, Canada or free land. And Moses, go down Moses, which was talking about Harriet Tubman as she was trying to help get slaves out of captivity. So this is a great image here of the depiction of how they were looking at the North Star and also looking at the moss on the trees trying to escape to the north. So you'll have the signal songs, the map songs, and as you see, signal songs basically were songs about escaping. The map songs were how they were called to meet. This is where we'll meet to get out. And so these are the different things as far as how the music played a major part into slavery and how those spirituals that we actually still sing to this day played a key factor in getting and motivating slaves to run away to freedom. So, and these are just some of the resources that I kind of use. And as we stated, we'll have a number of the resources that you'll actually see coming to the National Juneteenth Museum, to the National Juneteenth Museum. And we just want to continue to make sure that people discover and understand the Juneteenth Museum and understand why we celebrate Juneteenth.
So I have a question. Will your slides be available to the people who are watching this? Can I send them? Thank you.
Yes,